When I was a kid, there were certain things I could not wait for. My childhood wasn't always so pleasant. So there were things that I would fantasize about throughout the year. And of course, Christmas was like number one. But one of my most favorite things was getting the American Girl doll catalog in the mail. I would get so excited. I would look through those pages over and over again, imagining what it would be like to have one of those historical dolls and travel back in time through their story. Looking in this catalog, just seeing the clothes and the little beds and the accessories, I loved all of it. And I had no idea that years later, American Girl would become part of an even more meaningful memory for me. Because eventually, I wasn't the little girl looking through the catalog anymore. I was the mom looking through it with my own daughters. And when they were old enough, my mom and I planned a trip to the American Girl store in Dallas, Texas. We planned this trip with my daughters and my niece. We made a whole experience out of it. We stayed at the Westin, which at the time, they had American Girl packages where you could get a room and sign up for this package, and it included little beds for the dolls that you would bring or maybe buy. And it also had milk and cookies. So there were milk and cookies in the room waiting for us when we arrived. I still remember all of us, big kids and little kids, my mom and I walking with the girls into that store and seeing the dolls and the displays and everything set up. But what was so magical is seeing my daughters and my niece going through this experience, something that I had dreamed about when I was their age. It was truly magical. And almost 20 years later, that memory, it means even more to me now because my mom has been gone now for 6 years. I even get emotional just talking about it. But it got me thinking, what happened to American Girl? Is it still the company I remember? And what is it like for the people who work inside these stores, creating these experiences every day? I don't remember the employees who helped us that day. I remember that they were there, and there were a lot of them. It was busy. And without even knowing it, those associates, they became part of a family memory I am still talking about almost 20 years later. And that's what I want to talk about today. How American Girl has changed, and the people behind the store, and how sometimes retail, it becomes a part of our family story. Welcome to another episode of Sorry, It's Discontinued, a podcast about the reality of retail, the people who keep it going, and the stores and brands we all love. I'm Hillary, and I am so glad you're here with me. And today, we are going back into the world of American Girl. Let's get into it. Sorry. It's discontinued. We need to go back and look at how American Girl actually began. How did it become the company that sent me that magical catalog in the mail when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old? Now, the company, Pleasant Company, it was founded in 1986 by a woman named Pleasant Rowland, an educator and entrepreneur from Wisconsin. And her idea, it was pretty unusual for the toy industry. Instead of creating just another fashion doll, she wanted to introduce girls to history through characters they could actually connect with. You didn't just get a doll. You got her story. You learned, where did she live? About her family, what was happening in America during her lifetime. And then, of course, you could buy her clothes, furniture, and accessories. Oh, how fabulous. It was genius. And the first three historical characters, they were Samantha Parkington, which is the one my mom had, Kirsten Larson, this is the one I really wanted, and Molly McIntyre, which is the one I got. Keep in mind, we got these when we were adults, when we went with the girls. My mom couldn't afford it when I was a kid. But as Pleasant Company grew, so did the stories they wanted to tell. In 1993, they introduced Addie Walker, the company's first Black historical character. Addie's story begins during the Civil War as she and her mother escaped slavery and began building a new life in freedom. Then, in 1997, came Josefina Montoya, a young Mexican girl living with her family in New Mexico in 1824. And I think that was such an important part of what the Pleasant Company was doing at the time, because more girls could see themselves represented in these stories, which was new in the early 90s. And while girls could see themselves represented, other girls, they were learning more about lives and parts of American history that may have been completely different from their own history. And all of this was happening through a doll, her books, and her little world. And if you grew up during this time, you probably remember those catalogs. Getting that American Girl catalog was almost an exciting event. It wasn't the time when you could scroll through your phone for 30 seconds. You had to sit down on the couch or on your bed, which is what I did, and circle things. I had so many circles in that catalog. I had so many, and those pages were pretty worn by the time the new catalog would come, because I don't think they came very often. But you imagined what you would get if somehow someone handed you an unlimited amount of money. You won the lottery. Go ahead. Get what you want. Just thinking about it and wanting to explore this imaginary world. That's what Pleasant Company understood so well. They weren't simply just selling dolls. They were selling some of the things that I think are the heart of great retail. It's the storytelling, the imagination, and the belonging. And it reminds me so much of the cosmetic companies that I've worked for over the years. We weren't just selling a lipstick or a bottle of fragrance or great skincare. It was the best brands that had a story behind the product. They created a feeling and invite the customer into that story. An American Girl did the same thing. And I do think that's something retail can sometimes forget nowadays. It's about what's new and is exciting. But the storytelling and the connection, we remember how it made us feel and how badly we wanted to be a part of its story. The American Girl, I remember as Pleasant Company. It wouldn't say Pleasant Company forever. And this was something I didn't really realize until I started looking into the company again. I don't even know if I really investigated it at the time when my daughters and when we went to Dallas. But in 1998, Mattel purchased Pleasant Company. So today, American Girl is part of the same company behind Barbie, Hot Wheels, Fisher-Price. And over the years, American Girl, it started to evolve. The historical characters and their stories were still part of the brand, but American Girl began expanding beyond them. There were contemporary dolls, Girl of the Year, and eventually Truly Me dolls, giving kids more choices in skin tone, hair texture, eye colors, and appearances. There were more clothes, accessories, and collaborations, and then pop culture connections. An American Girl became much more of an experience, especially with the growth of its stores and restaurants and the doll hair salons and special events. So if you grew up with those original Pleasant Company catalogs and look at American Girl today and think, this feels a little different. Well, it is. The original Pleasant Company was heavily centered around historical characters and books, and it used storytelling to introduce girls to American history. But today's American Girl, it has become much more of a lifestyle and entertainment brand. But what's fascinating now is that American Girl, it also seems to understand that all those little girls who couldn't wait for the catalog to come in and arrive, they grew up. We are adults now. And some of us became mothers and some of us became grandmothers. So now nostalgia has become a part of the American Girl story too. And that's so interesting about this brand because American Girl started by telling us stories about generations of girls and eventually became part of the stories of our own generations. And for my family, that's exactly what happened. Was 3 generations walking in to that store that day in Dallas. Now, American Girl did something in retail that I think was pretty ahead of its time. They didn't just create stores. They started creating destinations. You could take your doll to have her hair done. You could eat together in the cafe. You could celebrate a birthday. You could shop for outfits. You could make an entire day or weekend out of visiting American Girl. And that's exactly what happened with my family. My mom and I took my daughters and niece to Dallas and we stayed at the West End. It wasn't just somewhere we shopped and walked through. It was actually the main part of the trip. It was so special. And thinking about how powerful that is for a retailer, we hear the term experiential retail. We hear it a lot now. Retailers are trying to figure it out. How do we get people off their phones? How do we get them into stores? How do we make shopping feel special again? An American Girl understood something years ago. Give people an experience they can't get from just the catalog or ordering something online. You can buy those things online, but you can't order the memory of your grandmother or your mother and your daughters walking through that store together. That's where you make the impact. You create those experiences and the memories. Now, American Girl is still there. The retail footprint and the company, yes, of course, it's changed. Stores have closed. Stores have moved. There was a store in Houston at Memorial City Mall. It's gone. And the Dallas experience itself has changed since my family went there. I tried to find the store that was in Dallas, and now it's located in the shops at Park Lane. The store I'd actually gone to on a recent trip to Dallas and walked through just to see what it felt like if it was similar. And you could see that the brand, it's continuing trying to figure out how American Girl fits into a world where kids are growing up with YouTube and TikTok and Roblox and influencers and an endless number of things that are competing for their attention. That is a huge challenge because how do you modernize something without losing what made people love it in the first place? I mean, we've talked about this with department stores. We've talked about this with malls. We've talked about it with beauty counters and makeup counters and fragrance and cosmetics. An American Girl has the same problem. How do you change before you stop feeling like yourself? Because if you lean too heavily into nostalgia, eventually the brand becomes primarily for the adults who are remembering their childhood. But if you change too much for today's kids, the people who love the original brand start saying, that's not the brand or the American Girl I remember. And that is a difficult balance. Maybe bringing back characters like Molly and Kirsten is one way that they are trying to connect those worlds. The mom remembers her, grandma remembers buying her, and now a daughter or granddaughter gets introduced to her. Suddenly, an old product becomes new again, and it starts bringing people back into the store. Now, outside of American Girl, outside of that experience, I was so curious. What is it like to work for this company? What is it actually like to work at American Girl? Do people really like working there? This was something I was really curious about. When I was walking through the store on my recent trip, I walked through and there were a lot of employees talking to each other. Some were laughing. They were showing the guests and customers items. The atmosphere and energy, it felt good. It didn't feel uncomfortable. It was kind of nice. So imagining working there, I mean, yeah, you're selling dolls. You're also dealing with birthdays, excited kids, parents, grandparents, tourists, collectors, some families that have saved for this trip. I don't know if it's happening as often, but some kids are bringing in a doll that they've loved on for years. And after looking through employee reviews and looking at them online, the overall picture was actually more positive than I expected. Not that I expected it to be bad, y'all, but retail, it's not easy. An American Girl has received fairly strong employee ratings compared with many other retail stores and environments. So employees frequently mention they enjoy their coworkers, which I witnessed walking through that store in Dallas. They were all getting along. They like the atmosphere in these reviews, and they feel an emotional connection to the brand. Some had even described working at American Girl, it was a childhood dream, which I get. Imagine growing up loving American Girl and then you're getting a job there. Of course, I mean, it's still retail. So, employees still talk about busy holidays. I can only imagine all the kids and chaos and fast-paced days. That would be a lot. They do mention pay. They mention management can vary at locations and limited opportunities for advancement, which it is pretty par for the course. Because American Girl may feel magical to the customer, but the people creating that magic are still retail employees. They're standing, they're cleaning, they're restocking, they're setting up all those tiny little displays. Have you guys seen some of the stuff? The little bakery setup and like the diner? I mean, it's pretty dang cute. But that would be a little but at the same time, probably really fun. But I'm sure that they have schematics and they have to really make sure they get it done at a certain time. And then they have to shift things around. Anyway, you're dealing with crowds and working weekends and holidays. And you are just trying to make it through the day like anyone in retail. And that's what brings me back to my own trip. Thinking about when I went to go visit that store with my girls, I don't remember the names of the employees who helped my mom, my daughters and niece and myself that day, but they were there. They became a part of that memory that I still have almost 20 years later. That's amazing. And I know that it's so easy to forget when we work in retail. We feel like we're just selling something. You're selling a perfume, a lipstick, a handbag, a doll, but you don't know what that purchase could mean to that customer. And it could be something that that person is actually going to remember for a very long time. That interaction, maybe even for the rest of their life. Retail can be exhausting, and I talk about it a lot on this podcast, and I'm never going to pretend otherwise. But there's that other side to it too. It's being a part of someone's story without ever knowing it. Some of these stores that aren't even around anymore, but that memory is still there. But you never know whose memory you're a part of. And that is so freaking special. Yes, American Girl is very different from the Pleasant Company that I remember as a kid and those catalogs that I love so much. It is owned by Mattel now, and a lot of the dolls have changed. The stores have changed, and the way children play has definitely changed. Retail has changed, and I have changed. I went from being the little girl staring at that catalog to being a mother walking through American Girl with my own daughters, my niece and my mom. And now I'm sitting here still talking about this experience. That is pretty incredible when you think about it, because somewhere along the way, a toy company became a part of my family's story. Maybe that's one of the things we underestimate about retail. I think we're starting to figure it out again. But stores, they aren't just buildings where we buy things. They are places where life happens. They're where your mom bought your first lipstick, where your grandmother took you Christmas shopping, where you spent your first paycheck, where you took your daughter to pick out her first American Girl doll. Behind every one of those memories, there was somebody working. So if you are working in retail right now and you're having one of those days, why am I even doing this? You might be creating a memory that'll impact somebody 20 years from now, and you don't even know it. So for this episode, I want to highlight my discontinued pick, which is the original Pleasant Company era versions of the historical dolls and their collections. Well, I know characters have returned and been re-released over the years. Collectors know that those original Pleasant Company dolls, clothing, books, furniture, accessories, their own little piece of American Girl history. And apparently, I should have asked my mom for Molly a lot harder or saved my allowance much harder, because some of those original dolls are worth some serious money now. Oh, yeah. And I also, the discontinued catalog. I don't know, the original catalog. I think there's still catalogs, but it's just, the one from the 80s. It's the best. Now, I really want to hear from you on this one. Did you have an American Girl doll? Did you get the catalog? Was there a doll you desperately wanted? Or did you take your own kids or grandkids to American Girl store? And beyond that, what store from your childhood feels like a part of your family's story? Send me your story, because I would absolutely love to hear it. You can even find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. But I thank you so much for sitting with me today for another episode of Sorry, It's Discontinued. And I hope you are about to do something nice for yourself, even if it is just to sit and appreciate all that you've accomplished. Don't be so hard on yourself. Life is hard enough. Now, please shop in your local stores, shop with a sales associate, and smile, whether you are behind the counter or in front of it. Because retail, it was never just a job. Sometimes it becomes a part of your story. Boy, that was cheesy, but I kind of loved it. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Sorry, It's Discontinued, the podcast that brings you the reality of retail and the people, brands, stores, and products we all love. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit follow, leave a review, or share it with a fellow retail warrior. You can always connect with me or support the show at sorryitsdiscontinued.com or buymeacoffee.com/sorrypodcast. Now, this podcast is independently produced and not sponsored by any brand, company, or organization. All views, opinions, and personal stories shared are their own and do not represent any retailer or brand mentioned. Brand names, product references, and service mentions are included for storytelling and commentary purposes only. But I thank you so much for sitting with me today. And remember, continue to shop in store, support your local stores and your local sales associates. You can even call them and order. It's amazing. And every visit helps keep these stores open so we can all continue enjoying real in-person retail therapy. And I'll see you next time. I appreciate you so much. Bye. Sorry. It's discontinued.